of. Okay.
I think we actually have some housekeeping first for the translators.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I jump right in there, right?
Sorry, let me share my screen. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. We're so glad you're here after your busy day to attend the OUSD Board of Directors Candidates Forum. Let's start. This webinar is presented in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Participants may click on the globe on the bottom toolbar to select and access your preferred language. There may be a slight delay before the globe appears and the rooms are open. Please mute original audio after you choose the language, so you will be able to hear your preferred language clearly. Myra, would you please transfer this to Spanish?
Hi. Okay, sorry, one second. Okay, los participantes pueden hacer clic en el globo en la parte inferior de la barra de herramientas para seleccionar y ascender su idioma preferido. Puede haber un ligero retraso para que aparezca el globo, y una vez que ingresen a sus habitaciones de Zoom, pueden nomás silenciar el audio original.
Thank you. Sharon, would you please translate this to Mandarin?
Yes. 晚上好，大家晚上好，谢谢你在百忙之中还抽出时间来参加 Oakland 学区委员会的问政会。那这个问政会呢，将会以英文、中文和西班牙文同时进行。参与者呢，您如果想听英文的，就请在底下等一下哈，会有一个地球出现。当你敲进去的时候，你就可以进到那个房间。开播之后呢，会有一些迟延，但是进去之后就请静音原音，将原来的英文静音，然后您就可以听到很清楚的中文翻译。谢谢。
Thank you so much, Myra and Sharon. Andrea,
sorry to cut you off. I was like thinking my brain was working too fast. I just want to quickly say in Spanish something real quick.
Oh, yes, sure. Go ahead.
Disculpen, la primera parte que quería, la información que les dije es nomás que quería presentar que esta presentación sí está en inglés, en mandarín y en español. Ese globito que va a aparecer en la pantalla va a ser para eso mismo. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Andrea, would you please start the interpretation room right now? And I'll pass the mic to Caroline.
Good evening. We thank you for joining us tonight. The Oakland Family Child Care Policy Group is a collaboration of family child care providers, Oakland Starting Smart and Strong, and Bananas. Family child care is an often overlooked but important part of our child care system. FCC providers open their homes and hearts to the children and families we serve. Perhaps some of you are unfamiliar with in-home childcare. Some quick facts. The majority of providers are women of color, over 80%. We are part of the community we serve and a stabilizing presence. FCC's family childcare providers are the lowest paid childcare workers, and this was verified by a recent study by the Center for Study of Childcare Employment, and it's the first look in 15 years. We have the best teacher to student ratios, allowing for very individualized learning. And we often offer extended hours, nutritious meals, and are open all year. Prior to the pandemic, a third of the children in California enrolled in childcare were enrolled in family childcare. Also worth noting, family childcare providers ratified a statewide union, CCPU, Child Care Providers United, in July 2020, and our first contract with the state the following year. Locally, CCPU is part of SEIU 521. During the lockdown and distance learning, we kept our doors open, risking our health and our family's health to care for our kids. We cared for the children of nurses and doctors and also grocery store workers. We welcomed school-aged children who had nowhere else to go, and they did distance learning from our homes. We nurture our children, create a love of learning, and prepare them for elementary school. We are early childhood educators. We are liaisons for our families to the resources they need, whether it's early intervention resources, vaccines, food, and more. We take care of the whole family and educate our parents. And we're happy that you've joined us tonight. Thank you.
Do I go? Question number 1, I'm Charlotte Glenn of Roses Daycare. I want to know, what is your stance on school closures in Oakland? And how will you address the impact of closures on Oakland's children?
I believe Jennifer is first.
Okay, I didn't want to jump in this time, right? Aaron, I think. First off, I'm opposed to all school closures. I think that needs to be taken off the table. I think that it hasn't been proven to save any money, but more importantly, it's created real havoc in our Black and brown communities. I taught at La Escuelita. I was a middle school teacher and our middle school was closed. So I have firsthand experience with that. It was really hard for our parents to scramble to find a school for their kids to go to. It was very hard for the middle school students to find new schools. You know, middle school is all about belonging. And all of a sudden for our 7th graders, they were forced to go to another school. And they went to many different schools. So, and then we were told by Director Yee that saved the district $33,000 and our mouths fell open. All this havoc for parents. As a result, La Escuelita lost about 20% of its K-5 students as parents chose to move their children closer to the middle schools where their kids attended. So I think that I again am firmly opposed to it. I will oppose it anytime it comes up on the board. I just think we need to look at funding our school sites first. And then I think just taking schools closures off the table. So as a school board member, I will pledge to vote against at any time it comes up. Thank you.
Tricia, who's next on the list? I can't see that any longer.
Oh, so David Kakashiba. Will you be reading his response, Carolyn?
Yeah, I'll read it. I'm opposed to the school board's recent decision to close 10 schools. I also believe Oakland Unified School District does need to reorganize itself with a reduced number of schools and campuses to operate given the number of students enrolled. However, reorganization must be done with the goal of providing the conditions in which principals, teachers, and support staff are able to substantially improve students' learning outcomes and reduce outcome disparities based on social economic status, race, language, and disability. Reorganization does not save costs, and cost saving is not the goal. Reorganization requires a significant investment of financial and human capital to achieve the goal of improving student learning outcomes, parent and teacher leadership development, multi-year school design, development, implication, and initial co-location and multi-year transition. Can we go to the next? Tricia, who's next?
Yeah, I don't think Max is here, so we'll go next to Mike Hutchison.
Great, thank you. And thank you for having us here today to talk about these issues. My name is Mike Hutchinson. I am the current school board director in District 5 here in Oakland. The family house that I've lived in for over 40 years was redistricted in the latest round of redistricting, and now I'm running for re-election in my new district, District 4. In 2020, I was elected on a platform of ending school closures and the financial mismanagement within OUSD. For me personally, I worked directly with youth for over 20 years until my 2 schools, Santa Fe Elementary and Maxwell Park Elementary, were closed in 2012. And since then, I've been fighting in every way I know how against these plans to close our neighborhood schools, and really changed from working directly with youth to becoming an organizer and an advocate largely around these specific issues in public education. We've had a lot of success in my first 2 years on the board. We've ended the blueprint process, which was our yearly process to close schools. I was the school board liaison to the strategic plan. And from there, we scrubbed any language of school closures from our strategic plan. But we're still left with this standalone closure plan that we really need to make sure is not followed through on by the next board. This election should be a referendum on the planned closure of 6 schools at the end of this school year. I will continue to lead the fight against school closures by any ways that I can. I plan on rescinding school closures immediately when the new board is sworn in January. And even more importantly, what we need to do is change this school closures list into a school redesign list and finally fulfill the promise of quality public schools in every neighborhood.
Has Max joined now? Is he able to answer the question next?
Yeah, Max is a panelist now.
Oh, yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I had me on the wrong site. Well, I 100 are against the school closures. Since day one, I've been stating that closing schools only hurts our children emotionally, physically, and academically. It also impacts the families. So I will always oppose the school closures. I think we have to start investing in our schools, prioritizing our schools, our students, our teachers, and from that, continue the road down to administration. We have, at this moment, and after today, families are still struggling to get the services they were getting at their former schools. So we need to change that. As a school board member, I will put all my energy and focus on helping these families, on hopefully reopening all these schools again, so that all of this damage and harm that has been done to the community could be repaired partially. Because I don't think we'll ever be able to fix all of this trauma that our children have suffered. And as a parent, I still have a long way to go and a long fight. So I will be always fighting for the students, always advocating for the students. And I want to be able to represent all my Spanish-speaking community that are either afraid or do not know how to use the proper channels to communicate with the board or with the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Picolia.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk with you. My name is Picolia Manigo. I'm a mother of 3, 2 OUSD students and an OUSD graduate. All 3 of my children participated in family daycares here in Oakland. So I'm personally just really grateful to see family childcare providers organizing and advocating for us to think about the issues in Oakland that impact our early childhood system. My stance on school closures is very clear. I am against school closures. We wrote into the reparations for Black students policy the idea that school closures should not impact majority Black schools. Unfortunately, this is a board that proceeded forward with that with closing schools in spite of the reparations for Black students policy being passed over a year ago. I think that the school closures that have proceeded forward have dramatically impacted our district and the neighborhoods in which those school communities exist. We need to provide resources to families, such as transportation, mental health supports. It is very traumatic to go through a school closure. It's even more traumatic to fight for that building to not be turned over into a charter. And I give a lot of respect to the families that have made it very clear that that's a community space and have won that fight. But I think the fight is not over. I think that we have to make sure that the resources that are located in the Parker Elementary building that include adult education, it also include mental health supports for families whose children have to walk over 2 miles to their new schools. I think we also need to figure out a way to bridge with you all as family daycare providers, childcare providers, to support families who are struggling to get their kids to school, as well as with aftercare. And so those are the things that I think about. And, as Director Hutchinson said, I would like to rescind closures.
Thank you, Pacolia. Next up, we have Nick Resnick.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me today and bringing us to the table around early childhood education. First and foremost, I'm a parent of 2 kids, a 7-year-old at Sequoia Elementary and a 4-year-old who's currently in a local preschool in our neighborhood. In terms of the school closure question, I have great concern about the way the process happened last year and the lack of engagement with the community and the lack of follow through in relationship to the Black reparations resolution. With that, I also believe that we need to step back and leave nothing off the table to support all children and all families. For over 3 decades in Oakland, student achievement in similar neighborhoods across our city has remained stagnant, and those neighborhoods mostly serve low income and students of color. That is the #1 thing I want to bring focus to as a school board member, identifying ways we can change our system to promise every single child, no matter what school they go to, access to an academic program and mental health supports that set them up for a life of choice and opportunity. I hope to solve this decades-long issue through a 3-year plan that centers our families and invests in enrollment counselors and utilizes research from other places that have gone through similar transitions. Due to the small schools movement, we do have a number of schools being co-located that are not allowing our resources to move across schools in ways students deserve. I look forward to being someone who can look into that with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Next, we have Valerie.
Buenas noches, everyone. Thank you so much for providing this forum and this space for us to have a conversation about one of my favorite subjects, which is early childhood education. And I also want to thank you all for the work you do every single day to support the working families of Oakland. You are the backbone of our early education system, and I just want to appreciate you. Now, regarding school closures, I am fully opposed to school closures because they do not save the district any money. They traumatize our community, and closures have a track record of displacing Black and Brown students, students with special needs, and students with disabilities. Last year, District 6 lost 2 schools, Parker Elementary and Community Day, and that impact has been deeply felt all around town. At the end of this school year, we are set to close Carl B. Monk in District 6 and 5 others in Oakland, with our hardest hit community being District 7, which is Deep East Oakland. OUSD didn't do any meaningful community engagement before the directors voted to close schools. They have not conducted an equity impact analysis on the proposed school closures, and they haven't fully costed out the impact of these school closures on our budget. So something has got to change, and that's why I'm running for school board. I will fight to rescind these closures and hold the superintendent accountable to a budget that centers our students and families versus the district office. So in this election, we have a clear decision to make. Do we want to continue business as usual and elect leaders who are closely aligned with those who want to close our schools, or do we want to make a change and vote for a working class candidate? That's the question we have for us today.
Thank you, Valerie. I don't think Kira is here, so we'll next go to Yoel.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And I also want to recognize and thank everyone for being here tonight and the hard work. I am a father of 3 children. I've been here in Oakland for 30 years, and all 3 of my children were raised here and gone to OUSD schools. I believe I'm the only parent here in D6 running that literally has come from a school site closure. But more importantly, Bananas was what helped me get to work almost 2 decades ago when my children, my oldest ones, were small. I literally would not have been able to work. I probably would be in the streets and not where I'm at today. So I have everything to say, to give, gratitude, thankfulness of programs like Bananas, because I would not have been able to survive. I was a single father and unable to take my children anywhere else except for the program and the resources that Bananas provided. And I just want to say real quick that we watch the CDC be closed and how the impact of that at Lakeview ending closing a year or 2 later. And so we'll talk about that in another question here, but I want to answer the question that's been posed. Of course, we're going to rescind school closures. We have a redesign model that Director Hutchinson said, and I think a lot of us support. We have sustainable community funding that's going to already approve that can fill in this gap right now. And then we can start looking at our central office to start finding that permanent dollars to start filling up the resources around that. And I'm almost at time, so my apologies, but I just want to recognize that we have to stop the closures that are coming up, not just in D6, but throughout the district. Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to turn it to Ms. Natanya, who will read our second question.
Good evening. My name is Ms. Natanya, and I'm with Young at Heart Daycare. My question to everyone on the panel is, childcare providers are the first foundation for education. To be inclusive of all early childhood educators in Oakland, how can OUSD build a school readiness program that connects childcare providers and pre-K, TK, and kindergarten teachers? Also, many childcare providers are experienced educators, but they do not have the formal college credentials to work as OUSD teachers. Given that OUSD is in need of experienced early childhood educators, how will you help providers become part of the OUSD teacher pipeline?
Okay, so we'll start with Jennifer whenever she's ready.
Okay. First off, I want to say Bananas did save my life as a young parent too. I had twins and had no idea what to do and how to find childcare for 2 kids at one time. And Bananas was my, go-to dial, as well as Twin Line, which was also through Bananas at that point. Early childhood education to me it's the foundation of our kids' education. It's their first experience with schooling. It's their first experience with feeling successful and feeling good about themselves and feeling like they're excited about learning. And it's a parent's first meeting with school as well. And so I think it's absolutely critical. And I think we do have to look at our childhood educators. We have to pay a livable wage. We have to include health benefits, and those can't be at the cost of the individual provider. I mean, I know the profit margin is very small for childcare owners. My daughter-in-law owns a childcare center in Pleasant Hill, so we've talked a lot about this. But I think this idea of the pipeline, I think, is interesting because I think that we really have to look at all the different ways that we provide childcare, whether that's family, whether that's through OUSD, whether that's through government agencies, however that looks. And I think we need to build a continuum. We need to build early childhood education, not just as preschool, but it is school and it is where our kids learn. So I think we need to pay a lot more attention to allowing all the different kinds of childcare providers to build a curriculum that's developmentally appropriate for our children. I know my youngest daughter actually my family has had the same childcare provider, both my grandkids and her. And she's become a part of our family. And she also helped me, diagnose some early intervention things for my youngest daughter. So again, the relationship that I had with my youngest daughter's childcare provider and my daughter also had with the same provider for her kids has been really invaluable in noting things that we needed to think about with our kids. So I can't say enough about the importance of it. I think that we should look at a pipeline that doesn't include a BA, because for many students, that would just be another additional cost that people couldn't afford, but an additional pipeline credentialing kind of thing, so that it's a much more unified program.
Thank you. All right, so our next speaker is David Kakashiba's writing. Carolyn, can you read his statement out loud? Oh, Carolyn, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. The most effective way to do so is, 1, make the case that building and supporting a powerful school readiness community of practice and an in-house early childhood educator career ladder pipeline are integral elements of OUSD's strategic plan and theory of change. 2, secure approval of board policy and/or superintendent directive to resource and build, number 1, with specific implementation benchmarks and deadlines. And 3, secure approval, appointment, and operation of a public accountability body to monitor implication and results. In general, school districts, including Oakland, have paid little attention to early childhood education unless philanthropy makes a significant multi-year financial investment. To win number 1 and number 2 will be the beginning of a game changer.
Thanks for reading that, Carolyn. All right, next up we have Max.
Well, for what? Sorry, sorry, I got a little toddler right here trying to learn. So I know childcare providers, they are our first teachers that actually help us parents with, in this case, with our children, but we're at work. I know there has to be, or we have to find a way to connect the childcare providers with the kindergarten, TK, and the schools. I personally, I'm as a parent, do need to work on it a lot, and there's a lot of more learning that I need to do. But as a board member, I would love to see it with Bananas and many other childcare providers to find a way, or that we could work together so they could be integrated into this program, so that they could also become part of the kindergarten and TK programs. I'm pretty sure that speaking with board members, we could find a way so that they could also be integrated in the system, or to find a resolution so they could be part of the program, so we could all work together. And at the end of the day, as I have always said, education, it is my main goal. So we need to start from 3 years old up to 20 if it is possible, so we can continue to educate our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have Mike.
Great, thank you. I'm born and raised in Oakland and a proud graduate of Oakland Public Schools. And one of the things from my background is my mom was a kindergarten teacher in Oakland for 40 years. And when it came time for my younger brother to need childcare services, my mom started her own preschool. And as a side note, my mom also wanted me to make sure to give a shout out to Bananas for how supportive they were to her when she was going through the licensing process. And so that preschool we actually had in the family for almost 10 years, because even once my brother outgrew it, my mom used that preschool and kept it in our house in order to pay the mortgage. And so these are issues that I've been very familiar with from a very young age. And I think, of course, we need to be able to connect all of our sectors together so we're working in unison. But there are some real pressures coming up that we're going to have to take a collective approach to. I recently went on a tour of some of our early childhood education centers and CDCs in Oakland, and I was talking to senior staff about it. We're really looking to expand our services next year and over the next 5 years. And we need to make sure as we're expanding that we're not disrupting pre-existing services. We have to have close collaboration with Head Start and with our private providers. And we can see this year OUSD tried to double the number of seats available in our after-school programs. And it's really been hit and miss as we've tried to staff up to meet that capacity. So going forward, it is good news. We do have new resources coming in, and there will be new pathways being formed. But I want us to be careful and proactive that we're really making sure that we expand services across our communities with as little disruption to the existing services as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So next is Picolia.
Thanks, everyone. So I really feel for this issue and have worked on it for a number of years. So I'm going to throw out a couple of ideas that I believe are really important when it comes to how we can be more inclusive. One, we can have joint professional development. There are a lot of requirements for family childcare providers as well as our TK and kindergarten teachers. And what I've seen in models like San Francisco, where the foundations have funded, collaboration between all kind of different providers, both FCCs. We don't talk a lot about family and friends, as well as our private daycare providers and our CDCs. Bringing folks together is a really important way to foster collaboration and inclusiveness, but also making sure that as we have TK and kindergarten students come into our schools, that our family childcare providers are also able to do bridge programs to our OUSD programs. I think that that's really important so that there's continuity between what you all know as family childcare providers and what our kindergarten and our TK teachers need to know about our students to ensure that there is continuity of care. The other thing that I think we have to talk about is that it's easy to talk about a pipeline. I don't see a lot of us actually having those conversations with our local colleges like Mills around what it's going to take to have a program that provides opportunity for our family childcare providers to come in as our teachers. And I want to lift up a specific example is just the timing of the program, making it available after business hours. And then the last thing is I think OUSD can use its lobbying powers to really advocate for the increased funding and bridge funding that's necessary for our FCCs to come out of this pandemic hole. Thanks.
Thank you, Picolia. Next up is Nick.
Thank you. So I deeply believe in the evidence and have seen firsthand the power of educators from our community working with our youth. And I think when we think about early childhood education, that is where we really see this front and center. And we know that homegrown educator pipelines can do incredible things for districts and also for communities. We've seen a number over the years, like Teach Tomorrow Oakland, programs that have helped us keep Oakland professionals interested in teaching in our city. And they shouldn't start at kindergarten and stop at 12th grade. Like some other folks have shared tonight, we need this to move to our early childhood education space and also our community college space, where we know that the impact for students at those ages is critical to them seeing themselves as professionals and seeing themselves as confident folks in the city of Oakland, where they were born and where they live. And a few concrete ideas would be to consider working with the Peralta colleges and CSU East Bay to formalize a pipeline program. We'd want to make sure to seek funding to cover participant costs from our local community. We'd want to provide support to passing the CBEST, which right now is a gateway to being a credentialed teacher. And additionally, I want to work with the OUSD HR team to learn more about how we can create pathways and reduce barriers to help our qualified childhood educators remain in our city and remain in Oakland schools, both early childhood education and elementary. I'd also want to make sure that as we hopefully pass Measure H, we have this specific area on our mind. And we are developing those career pathways with our local agencies in support of children who would love to move into these careers, but just don't know how. So I look forward to working with you all to make this happen on behalf of our kids.
Thanks, Nick. Next up is Valerie.
Thank you so much for this question. You know, as someone who's worked with childcare providers for over 3 years, I know the dedication and hard work and commitment you all have to our children and working families. I believe that OUSD should partner with childcare providers, early childhood organizations, resource centers, and families to develop a plan that creates this teacher pipeline for those who want to join OUSD, while also supporting providers who want to remain independent business owners. You know, whether it's a specific type of program, schedule, or transportation considerations, working families need options for early childhood education. So having a multi-system or multi-delivery system is really key here. So as OUSD builds out its transitional kindergarten, we need to consider ways to attract people to those new positions while offering some of the things that my competitors have already said, but also tuition assistance, credentialing support, and really anything else you all as stakeholders tell us that you need in order to be a part of our system. At the same time, we also need to ensure that there are safeguards in place to protect in-home childcare providers from going out of business. So that means, you know, maybe partnering with school sites to provide, to offer after school programming at early childhood centers, ensure that families fully understand the different programs to ensure that they pick the best choice for their specific student, because sometimes transitional kindergarten at our OUSD site may not be the right fit for that student. And then be able to connect providers in many different ways to our kindergarten teachers so that they can discuss specific situations around specific students. Plainly, we need more collaboration and communication to support all of Oakland's children and families.
Thank you, Valerie. And finally, we have Yoel.
Yeah, thank you again for this question. So I just want to pick up, and I'll keep my timer on so I can keep an eye on it. But I just, again, want to emphasize a couple of things that, you know, without this, working class parents can't function. They can't go to work. And so I think that it's really important that we recognize that this is, yes, in the frame of early child development, but this is our education system, and this should be already integrated on what we're doing. And I really feel, again, after the experiences having CDCs for a short period of time at school sites, we've seen pathways and enrollment affected at the school sites. So I want to back up one piece of this, is that I think there really has been a lack of direction with prior school board members. This is not directed towards Director Hutchinson. He's only been on there for about a year. But I think we've heard even David say in multiple forums that the board has been kind of behaving without a rudder. And not really giving the school district direction on this. Right now, there's a chain of emails that I believe Valerie and a few of us are in, specifically on D6, and we have agencies that want to get in the school sites, and the district themselves are getting in the way of that, whether it's the process, not being transparent, and we have the spaces to get these resources into school sites. But again, because the district is not being directed, because we're not taking a kind of a proactive approach and telling the district on what they need to do around this, I think we see gaps. So one last piece, and if I still have a little bit of time, is that I really think that we should take a look at what the credentialing is for this specific age group, and if we can have one credential teacher per the ratio of kids. And we really kind of look at how we're going to do that so we can start having examples and start having tangible results now, not years from now as this process changes for our kids that need this and our families that need this the most right now.
Thank you for that. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert, will you be able to read your question out loud? Oh, Mr. Robert, I'm not sure your audio is working. I'll give you another few seconds. And Mr. Robert, I don't think we can hear you, so we can see you, which is great, but I can read your question out loud for you on your behalf. So Mr. Robert Williams, he is the owner of Blessed Beginnings Daycare in East Oakland. His question is, Universal Transitional Kindergarten is a new grade for 4-year-olds in public school. Many 4-year-olds will leave childcare, and without this revenue, childcare providers may go out of business. This will reduce overall childcare supply, including infant toddler care, so ages 0 through 3. Childcare providers deserve job security. How will you address the impact of UTK on Oakland's broader early childhood education system, including daycares? And we can get started with Jennifer.
This has been a question that has been at my family's dinner table. Like I said, my daughter-in-law owns or manages a childcare center in Pleasant Hill. And we were talking about this the other day because it's had a huge impact on her center. And a number of parents did choose TK. And then, like somebody said earlier, decided TK wasn't for their child, but they couldn't get back into their the childcare center because they had either moved the staff or had to lay the staff off. So I think this is a real problem. And I think that, a number of parents choose TK because they're paying less in childcare. There are a lot of reasons why people choose it. I think a lot of people think, getting the Head Start in school. But I think that kind of goes back to our first question, which is really not looking at all the different kinds of childcare providers and services and flexibility that parents need, and the respect of all childhood workers. So, I was talking with Pacolia about this earlier today, because I was thinking, how do you solve this problem? And I think, I hope I'm not stealing what she's going to say, but she'll say it more eloquently than me. But this idea of perhaps linking, so that after school, because obviously TK students need after school care. So is there a way to have family providers provide that service? And I think part of that seems like a really good idea to me, but I think there are some problems in terms of paying the workers for, a livable wage. And I'm sorry, this is like ringing. And I think that you have to think about what kind of ties we would have links to OUSD. And as I thought about that, as people have been talking tonight, I also think, I'm at time. I'm sorry. I'll just finish up. I think we don't necessarily need to think about linking with OUSD because I think there's an autonomy in private and family care as well. So sorry, I was interrupted by a phone call. So I got a little joke, but I'll let Pacolia explain it. She will do it very eloquently, and I agree with her. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's all good. Carolyn, can you read David Kakashiba's response?
Effectively addressing this issue requires collective leadership and collaboration from Oakland Unified School District, First 5 Alameda County, City of Oakland, and community-based childcare providers. In addition to resources and funding streams accessible to Oakland Unified, there are major new dollars coming to Oakland's early care environment through the pending implication of Measure AA, City of Oakland, and Measure C, County of Alameda. I believe Oakland is well positioned to address community-based childcare provider job security. Getting on the same page is critical. I intend to be a vocal and active advocate on the issues addressed in questions 3 and 2 if I am elected to the school board. Thanks.
Thanks, Carolyn. Next we have Max.
All right. Well, I want to say, hopefully I'm not wrong, but I believe since we are training teachers, so there's some sort of funding to get teachers trained, we could also help those families or those parents to hopefully get on the system and hopefully get join the classes, help with the TK, or kindergarten. That way they're not left unemployed. I think that might be one route, or another one, hopefully that could be we as a board members, we might be able to find a different solution so that there's this bridge still continuing with the programs that they exist, so the children could still continue to go to kindergarten at a school and then go back to a childcare provider for after school program. So I think it is a lot of planning, thinking that we have to do. And I will say, you know, I'm always learning. I will always be open for new ideas, but I do know we have to think of it and come up with a strategy as a group and as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Next up, we have Mike.
Great, thank you. This is an issue that I'm concerned about. And so the first thing I would like to request, you know, I've asked senior staff directly about this issue, and I was assured that there are meetings and tables taking place with various groups to discuss these very issues. So if that's not happening, I need members of this community to make sure that you're reaching out to me and other school board directors to make sure that we're being proactive with this. You know, but again, like I said before, we are going to see an expansion of these services from OUSD because the funding has been approved. And so how do we expand services without disrupting what's already in place? And to be very honest, there is going to be institutional momentum on the OUSD side to register as many students as we can in our 4-year-old programs as an enrollment pipeline for our elementary schools. And so again, we need to start having these conversations. We've seen it happen over and over where increased funding that we fought for over years has had these unintended consequences. And really, when it comes down to it, we're going to have to look at this more neighborhood by neighborhood where these intimate relationships have been set up. And so the worst thing that we could do as a community is not only close our neighborhood schools, but disrupt our childcare services that have grown up around those schools. So again, these dollars are coming. It is up to us to make sure we have the conversations and policies in place so this is an add-on and a positive and doesn't disrupt some of our traditional institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we have Picolia.
So as someone who's been sitting with Oakland Starting Smart and Strong and has been a member of several community efforts to really think about this, I think it's been a disservice to see TK roll out without partnership with the family child care providers. And I think we all were concerned at the state level to see it be so aggressively pushed during the pandemic. With that said, I think there are some opportunities that we need to think about because I'm listening to families, and what I've heard is, you know, I still need care before school starts. I have work hours that are not the traditional 9 to 5. Our TK programs are not able to fulfill that need for our working families. And so I would like to kind of broaden the conversation around not just how do we mitigate the challenge of TK, but how do we actually robustly invest in our family child care providers to, one, not close. I think the highest priority is that you do not close because we are a child care desert. Right. I think the second thing is how do we give you all the business assistance necessary to really expand your enrollment and from 0 all the way through 4 years old. And then the third thing that I think folks don't talk about a lot is how do we make sure that we do implement Measure C and Measure AA in an appropriate way that centers what family child care providers need, which is cash in hand, straight up. Subsidies approved, more resources for our 0 to 4-year-olds, and making sure that none of you close because we don't have enough slots in Oakland to ensure that all of our children are getting access to early care. And we know that disproportionately impacts our Latino, our immigrant, and our Black families. So I think that it's about how we ensure that the TK is being implemented, but it's really about how do we center family child care providers getting the investments that they deserve. You all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Kakolia. Next, we have Nick.
Thank you. So in my experience in Oakland, there is still a tremendous shortage of childcare slots in our city. And I would advocate for a partnership between the district and community organizations like the Unity Council, government organizations like First Five, to find ways to better connect and find funding to support matching providers with families needing childcare. I would also support jointly pursuing grant funding to provide tuition support for some of our families. So giving more access to TK is something that I do believe is good. And we can't let it unintentionally hurt our preschool programs that have been deep community members here in Oakland for a number of years. So the questions that I'm really thinking about and that I look forward to working with you on is how can we expand access to TK here while also holding critical our local preschool providers and making certain that these aren't in direct competition. As I'm out there talking to families with young children, I hear a great need for early morning and after school care. And I wonder how those areas and family childhood providers can work together to tackle this demand issue and provide different experiences for our children. I think childcare providers should also be part of our pipeline into any type of credentialed teaching jobs in OUSD, should they be interested in that. And that these systems shouldn't be in silo, but we should be working for our educators to be in partnership so they can be successful.
Mm-hmm.
We have huge resources, and I believe that starts with making sure that we focus on some of the most critical areas like our early childhood educators. Lastly, I would just say that I would really want to work deeply with folks that are closer to understanding how we can mitigate policies and practices so we can make certain that we all can thrive. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Valerie, you're next.
Thank you. I agree that Universal Transitional Kindergarten will have a huge impact on the whole early childhood education system. So we need to come up with a plan and have the time to make an equitable transition so that our kids get the education that they need and early child care workers get the job security that you all deserve. So in order to do that, we need everyone at the table, childcare providers, early childhood organizations, resource centers, as well as families, to really make a plan around three things. You know, the mixed delivery system that will support working families who have different programming needs that maybe the district isn't offering. Some examples of that are like full immersion programs, whether they be language or cultural immersion, and also a Montessori learning style. We don't have those in OUSD, so you all would be the ones that would be offering those types of programs. We also need to develop a recruitment and retention plan with incentives for providers who want to enter the teaching workforce. And lastly, we'll need to advocate on the city, county, state, and federal level to increase funding for childcare so that folks that are remaining in-home providers and also for our centers so that they can have the resources they need to stay open. Because as Pacolia said, the pandemic hit our providers extremely hard. 50% of our childcare providers and centers closed during the pandemic. And so those are things that we have to consider as we move into transitional kindergarten. So I'm ready to do the work, ready to roll up my sleeves and get the work done. But I'm going to need your help, not only in getting elected in this election, but then holding me and others accountable to making sure that we have a just transition and that we provide job security for you all, as well as all of the other teachers in our district. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. And we will go to Yoel to close us out.
Hi, thanks again. Yeah, so this is obviously, again, extremely important to parents, to working class parents. I just want to be really clear here. So instead of repeating some of the things that Valerie, Director Hutchinson, Pacolia have mentioned, I think it's important to understand that we have to do one thing. We can't keep saying that we're going to talk to the district. We have to direct the district, OUSD. We need to tell them what we need to do, and we need to come up with a plan. And I believe the only way to do that is to actually have a tangible and intentional committee that allows all of the school board directors like myself to go to school sites in their district and pull them together and make sure we're putting these resources where they're needed. And like Director Hutchinson said, we're not disrupting the ones that already have resources there. So I want to be very intentional. The resources are coming. We have sustainable community school funding coming in, already approved. We have an increase of per pupil spending that's coming from the state, almost an historical amount to put us almost in the top 10. So the funding's there. And the thing is, we have experienced childcare providers that already have experience. Where do we need them most? In a city that needs this the most right now? There's so many opportunities. We cannot allow this to happen and miss this opportunity right now. So we have to take a more proactive approach, be more direct and be more intentional, create a committee. Let's get school board members to actually go to the school sites and understand what's going on so we can take that back to the district and tell them what we need and what they need to do, and not just leave it up to chance anymore, because that's what's been going on for decades. Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much, and thank you for being concise. We are running on time. Carolyn, can I turn it over to you?
I just wanted to thank all of the candidates for coming today and for your very well thought out answers, and for all the work that you are doing for the kids. And thank you for sharing your ideas so that we can discern, who we should be voting for and who we should be, sharing with other providers and telling people, this is a really important election. Oakland has quite a few important elections this year, but I do feel like the school board one is, sort of vital for the whole health of Oakland and a real chance to change the whole, shift of the school board to something that will really serve Oakland families. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Much appreciated. I'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for holding this space, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you so
night.
much.
Can we